What is up, guys? Dozer03 here, and today we're going to do a bit of a different kind of video. So, Destiny 3 is going into, I believe its 4th year. I think we're in the end of year 3 right now. It's been so long with these games, it all kind of falls into one. But, what made Destiny 1 so great? Because something about it is just so much better than Destiny 2. So, just gonna play some Destiny 1 and bounce off some thoughts as to why D1 was so much better than D2. To do this, we're gonna look at some different aspects, what made the games different, but common traits in the games. We're gonna look at the story, destinations, strikes, raids, crucible, weapons, and anything else that made Destiny 1 better, or something that Destiny 2 might have done better composed to Destiny 1. So to start out, the story and the lore. Now, of course, Destiny 1's vanilla story was nothing short of an absolute disaster, where the stranger didn't matter until Destiny 2, and Vault of Glass just kind of came out of absolutely nowhere, and all of a sudden you have to kill some giant time god.
Some creatures of the hive strain against
But,
the Will of
oh, one of my favorite strikes also.
Alakul,
And we'll get the strikes later.
is one
But
such.
something
Long ago, he
about
fomented
Destiny 1
rebellion against the king and attempted
was just
to
so
take
much
his
better. I mean, the
mantle.
lore, there was such a
Alakul
bigger feeling of
failed,
mystery
and
in
now
Destiny 1.
awaits the mercy of the hive.
There were parts of the story that
Chance, the Dark
it made
Blade
you
will
wonder,
step
especially
in
with
to
the hive
take
stuff.
Oryx's crown.
Crota, Oryx, the
We
whole,
must not
the Book of
allow
Sorrows
another
and
prince to rise.
the sword logic, that whole series of lore is probably my favorite story in any video game. Now, I know one of the things that the game got criticized for was the fact that the story was in the Grimoire and you had to go read it. But that's not really a big deal. Many games have expanded universes. Halo has a ton of novels. Star Wars has a ton of novels outside of the main video games and movies. So Grimoire, I don't see as being as big of a deal as I think people probably thought it was. But yes, if you didn't read the Grimoire, you'd lose a lot of the story. And again, yes, the launch story was an absolute disaster. Destiny 2, by comparison, the launch story made sense, and it had a coherent story, but it wasn't that good. The story of D2, Gaul should have been this massive raid boss, and you should have culminated your story killing Gaul. But you kill him in 5 minutes in the last mission, which just took away so much of what that story could have been. You'd play this whole campaign, Gaul, and you kill Gaul in like 2 minutes with your super. And he was supposed to be this larger-than-life boss. He somehow wields the power of light, and it just didn't really happen. It didn't really go as I think they could have planned it to go. So those are base stories. Then, of course, expansions. I'm not going to sit here and talk about every expansion story. But overall, I think Taken King is the best story in Destiny. Partial because the Hive are my favorite enemies. And if the story and lore of the Hive is, again, probably the best lore of any enemy in a video game. Again, that goes back to Crota, Oryx, the Sword Logic, Book of Sorrows, all that awesome stuff. So they did, I think Bungie did a great job with the lore of this game, just unfortunately a lot of people don't know it, because when it's not in your game, it's not something people necessarily find. It was in the Grimoire, so people didn't necessarily know it existed unless they actively read the Grimoire or watched lore videos on YouTube. That's what I did to figure out what the hell's going on. And it gives you such a greater appreciation for the game itself. But the House of Wolves, that story wasn't bad. Nothing crazy. Pretty cool, but kind of standard. So that was the first expansion. No, that was the second expansion, D1. Crota was first. Crota's story, the story itself was only a few missions, but the raid was amazing and really introduced you to the Hive, so it kind of set the stage. So that was a good story. By comparison, the first story expansion in D2 was Curse of Osiris, and I'm not going to have any other comments on Curse of Osiris. I think we all share one common opinion, that is an absolute abomination of anything. The fact that I paid money for it hurts my soul every day I exist. Now we can talk about Curse of Osiris, excuse me, House of Wolves. Pretty good story. It also did bring Prison of Elders, but we'll talk about that later. For now, again, we're just sticking strictly to the story. So, the story in House of Wolves wasn't crazy, but it was pretty cool. It introduced you more to the Reef, Petra. So, not bad. But Warmind in D2, I actually thought was very good. I really enjoyed Warmind. Oh, shit! Man, I really loved Warmind. I thought that was a really fun DLC. Really enjoyable one to play through. Probably my favorite DLC of Destiny 2 as a whole, even with the bigger ones coming later. And then you get the first big expansions in each game. Taken King, which I think is just the greatest story in any video game I've ever played. Just the whole story of the campaign. And then when you go back into Oryx's Ascendant Realm in the raid and kill him, you know, you killed him at the end of the campaign, you thought, okay, he's done for. But then you have to go kill him again in his final realm. And to me, that was absolutely sick. And it tied into the lore of the Hive perfectly. That to me was a perfect story, perfect ending, designed, again, perfectly. It took care of the problems of the first Destiny game where I said there was an incoherent story. I'm gonna die again, aren't I? Yeah, I am. Jesus Christ. And then Forsaken. Forsaken was the first big expansion in D2, and by comparison to Taken King, it wasn't bad. Cade died. I'm assuming the voice actor had other things to do, but Cade dies, and then you don't even know who killed Uldren because of the way the cutscene ends. But then I think you realize later you don't even kill Uldren. He's still hanging out. So, kind of have no idea what the point of that is. It's another one of those, just like Gaul, you expect a lot more, but you don't really get a lot more. Overall, the story was fun. The Warden of Nothing strike was really enjoyable, and it tied into the story. You hear Varix. That was pretty cool. And then Rise of Iron and Shadowkeep. Again, Rise of Iron does a better job than Shadowkeep of tying into the lore. Rise of Iron, we know that Rasputin led the Iron Lords, trapped them, and he led them to Siva to kill Felwinter. So we learned a lot more about the Iron Lords, and it was, again, a great DLC that tied into the lore of Destiny. Shadowkeep tries to introduce the darkness, so I can't really speak much on what that is or what that does, because we don't know anything about the darkness yet. So, it'll be cool if this new DLC is good, but this new DLC is going to tell us how good Shadowkeep was. Because if the darkness turned out to be nothing cool or interesting, Shadowkeep being the whole build-up is pointless. But if it turns out the darkness are awesome, then Shadowkeep's cool because it introduces us to this new enemy. So it really depends where they go with the darkness. We'll figure that out more when Beyond Light comes out in November. So, yeah, really that's the end of story. Just overall, D1's story the storytelling might not have flowed as coherently as D2, but the story it was telling was better. So once you actually read the lore and filled yourself in on what was happening, which anyone can admit is too much work. You know, the game definitely should tell you a majority of the story. Destiny 1 didn't do that. They left most of that to the player to go find out themselves. Which, again, the game should tell the story, but the story was good, so if people did go out and read it, I think they'd be treated to a great story. So moving on, I guess we'll talk about destinations. And what I mean by destinations, just the places you go. What game has better places? So, we'll start off with Earth. The EDZ in D2 isn't bad, isn't good. It's kind of the base area, just like Cosmodrome is on Earth. Keep in mind the nostalgia factor is probably pretty huge. But I loved the Cosmodrome. I loved exploring it more than I loved exploring the EDZ. I thought it was cooler, thought it was better, and so the Cosmodrome, of course, had more to do, and I know D2 has Lost Sectors, which that is a pro in their destinations because it is something else to do.
We're on the right
and
track.
Public events kind of happen more often. But I think also with Earth, you do have to consider the Plague Lands. And the Plague Lands, of course, had Archon's Forge, which, as in whatever you want to call it, open world activity, is better than anything D2 has. Obviously, the Seraph Towers in D2 were probably the worst thing I've ever played in a Destiny game. The Seraph Towers were atrocious in D2. So while the worlds do feel more alive in D2, they're not designed as well. Like, I think Io is a huge missed opportunity. I think looking at it, there's a lot that could be done lore-wise that they're just not doing. I feel like you get a lot more of the story of the Destiny universe in the destinations of Destiny 1. I think the Dreadnought is another major win. The moons are the same, so we can kind of forget those. Venus was great, but in D2 there's just too many weak locations. Mercury sucked. Titan wasn't bad, but it wasn't really good. Io, again, wasn't really bad, it wasn't really good. What else do we have? Let's see. We have Tangled Shore, which I do like. I think Tangled Shore is pretty cool. But again, it wasn't mind-blowing. Dreaming City was probably the only one that was amazing. Because Dreaming City tied into the lore. It had the Blind Well, which was amazing. Really fun activity.
The wizard Varrock was his
and it looked really cool. So Dreaming City, I think they nailed. Well, Mars, I also think Mars in D2 beats the Mars of D1. I absolutely love D2's Mars. Just res me, I don't feel like... Thank you. But I mean, destinations, it is a pretty big thing in an open world game like Destiny. You're always going to the destinations. Chances are, if you're really doing your quest, you have to grind shit on all the destinations. So I don't really mean destinations in terms of strikes, because those are kind of separate from the open world aspect. Like, you probably couldn't get here if you went on the Dreadnought in Patrol. So I don't really consider that. But when I mean patrol destinations, I mean patrols. But I think the Dreadnought is probably the single greatest location ever created in Destiny. And again, that's probably my partiality towards the Hive and Taken King and Destiny 1. But I definitely think that the Dreadnought was amazing. There was so much stuff to do, so many secrets to unravel. So then strikes, kind of branching off of destinations. The strikes in Destiny 1 were so fun. And this strike right here is a perfect reason why. This strike was amazing. Again, as I said earlier, it's one of my favorite strikes in the entire series. I don't know what my favorite strike is, but it's one of them. D2, I didn't have a ton of strikes that I said, wow, that was awesome. I loved Savathûn Song. I'm trying to think of other ones, though. Savathûn Song was fantastic. Lake of Shadows wasn't bad. But overall, there's not a ton in this game. I mean, I can list them, but there'd be too many. To me, legitimately, every strike in this game was fantastic. Sunless Cell is one of my favorite. Valhalla Arc just created a massive meme. With whether we wanted it or not. That was, can't go wrong with that. The Shield Brothers were fun. The Scion Player's Dust Tower, probably the only one I didn't really like. That one just felt pointless, because a Scion is a boss. Whether you oversize it like they did in D2 or create 3 of them like they did in this one, a Thrall's not a boss. This badass Hell Knight in the dark with an axe, yeah, this is a boss. You never know where he is. There's always Thrall chasing you from all directions. This strike is one of the most unique in Destiny. Fuck! See? This guy's nuts. So, and I think in D2, the other thing with strikes is, the problem is, and this is one of my least favorite aspects of Destiny 2, was, and they did this in the 2-year 1 expansion, they took story missions and turned them into strikes. Come on. I died, but I died for the cause. But, yeah, I mean, Curse of Osiris was probably like 8 missions, right? And 2 of those missions became strikes. What the hell is that? Create a unique experience. Don't reuse a mission and just buff the final boss's health and add a couple more enemies. That's not a strike. That's just a heroic story mission. So that I did find particularly friggin' ridiculous. Can I not open this chest? Yeah, let me use my skeleton key. And speaking of that, strike exclusive loot. D2, it took them a long time to get strike exclusive loot. And that's what you would grind for. You grinded to get that Imago loop with the Fatebringer roll. You grinded for Grasp of Malak. In D2, there was no reason to grind strikes, because in the original year, there was no strike exclusive loot. And then when they made it, it's like Nightfall only. So if that's not the Nightfall, there's no reason to do the strike. And I know in D1 it was kind of the same in that regard, but it wasn't. And I think, again, in D1, the strikes were so much more enjoyable that it didn't really matter. It was so much more fun to do strikes in D1. Like, I have a video on the channel of me doing strikes for 2 hours. I didn't mind grinding. So raids, much shorter to speak on because I'm not a huge raider, but D1, I legitimately loved all 4 of the raids. The first time we cleared the Taken King raid, King's Fall, hands down the greatest moment in gaming for me in my whole life. Summer 2016, me and the boys played that raid all fucking summer, and we couldn't beat it. We'd get to one part or the other, and we would just fail. Could not beat it whole summer. And at the end of summer, we beat it. We beat it. And just that feeling, knowing you beat something like that, is amazing. To have beaten that was unreal. And I will say, since D2 was not as good as D1 in general, I'll say that. A lot of people we play with in D1 don't play D2 anymore. Wok doesn't play. Some of the other guys we play with don't play anymore. So it's definitely harder to get a raid together. I hate LFG. Because I do raids to play with the boys. I don't do it just to get a weapon. So, I'm not going to do a raid if I can't do it with at least 4 of the guys. And we just don't have those people anymore. So I can't really say I've done raids in D2. But just from what I've heard from friends, they're not as good. From the friends who do the LFGs and don't mind. I shouldn't be charging like this. This is dumb. I'm running backward. But they've said the strikes, the raids aren't as good. I did a little bit of Leviathan. I've probably tried every encounter in Leviathan once at separate times. Never actually beaten it. I didn't like it. It didn't feel like a raid. Callus was like, yo, what's up? I'm gonna test you. No, that's not what a raid is. A raid is, there's a really intimidating enemy that's going to destroy everything if you don't stop them. And there's pressure, there's that feeling you get, like when you're fighting Crota and Oryx, you know it's a boss. And with Atheon, you know this dude can fuck you up if you're not careful. Fighting a giant robot fat pig does not have the same feeling, naturally. And I don't know how the raid lairs went. I know from people I've talked to and from what I've seen on the internet, they weren't really received too well. They weren't too hot, which I understand, because a raid lair is probably something really good, honestly. An easier raid experience, like a harder strike, but not quite a full-blown raid. I did hear that Last Wish was really good. Can't say I've done it, but I've heard good things about Last Wish. Some of the other raids, though, I literally haven't heard people talk about them. And I'm guessing because it's really not important. Whatever the one that came with Black Armory was called, Scourge of the Past, I think, I have not heard it mentioned like, once. I'm quite convinced no one cares. And again, the raids in D1 tied right into what was going on. Crota and Oryx tied perfectly, and I think the story of Destiny 1 was dominated by the Hive. And the Atheon raid, lore-wise, was extremely important. Again, it did kind of feel randomly thrown in. Atheon was only briefly mentioned in a mission in Vanilla D1. So you didn't really think it was going to be a threat. You thought it was more just some brief storytelling of something that happened in the Destiny universe. Ended up being the hardest activity for 2 years. But I think the raids in D1, again, were better. Now, the only place you're going to see D2 win is quality of life, and we'll get to that kind of at the end. But I give it props because, yes, quality of life matters, but I also expect quality of life improvements in a sequel. So I do find it hard to give a ton of props. But Crucible, another thing I'll talk about. Not the biggest Crucible player. At all. At all. I'm not a huge Crucible player. I do it. If I have to for a quest, or sometimes I do it for fun, but it's very rare. You know, I don't really play a lot of other shooters because I don't really care about PvP. I care much more about PvE, which is probably why I play Destiny more than Halo or Call of Duty, because I'm not the person who can just sit and play the same 10 story missions. That's why I don't really play Halo. I'll play the campaign like once, then I'm good, because I don't need to do the same Yeah, I don't need to do assault on the control room 10 times. I do it once, I'm good. Trust me, I'm good. With Destiny, I can do the same mission 10 times if I'm getting rewards at the end of it. Like when you do those heroic story missions, you're getting stuff. So that's cool. If I'm getting stuff out of it, I don't mind. If there's rewards to be given, I don't mind doing it over and over. But obviously in a game like Call of Duty, Halo, you're not getting rewards, you're just playing campaign mode. That guy's got a King's Fall weapon, that's pretty cool. But yeah. In Iron Banner, in Destiny 1, that was the shit. Iron Banner in D2 feels nothing like Iron Banner in D1. And when D2 launched, the Crucible was such a shit show. It started out as 4v4, which was probably the biggest problem, as we've been used to 6v6. That was a massive mess. And in D1, Crucible, don't get me wrong, had problems. Every update there was a problem. I remember shotguns were a huge problem in year 2, and then year 3 happened, and everybody used a sidearm that I think I still have. I think Woodworm. Yeah, the Wormwood. Yeah. If you weren't playing Crucible if you didn't have that weapon back in year 3. So I get it. Yeah, I'm not saying D1 Crucible is perfect. They've never really been able to balance. It's always been a problem. But, you know, it was fun in D1 because everyone could get in on that fun. You know, if shotguns were the meta, fine. We all fucking party crashers. That's just how it was. If one person had it, everybody has it. So, that's fine. I think what else I really want to cover. Exotics, I mean, that's a big one. The exotics in D1 felt exotic. I mean, they were good weapons. Icebreaker automatically reloaded. Gallahorn literally destroyed the game for the first year. The swords in Taken King were amazing. And not to mention the quests to get some of these exotics. D2, it's like, you know, kill 20 enemies with this. Run this strike. Get 100 kills in the Crucible with this. There's nothing real challenging about it. They just, you go through the motions. In D1, let me tell you how hard it was to get some of these weapons. Touch of Malice, No Time to Explain. You had to grind for kills, rare materials, run heroic story missions and find the hidden pathway, find collectibles on the Dreadnought. Marked by the Border. They're fucking oracles or something in this? Or are we cleansing? Oh, cleansing. What else? You had to run the raids. Necrochasm. You had to run the raid. Just to get the freaking thing. And then the exotics themselves were really unique. Atheon's Epilogue, in this case, isn't. It just happens to have a burn. I'm trying to see if I have anything crazy in here. Kind of some of the general ones. But, like, Black Spindle. Everyone had Black Spindle. That thing was broken when it dropped. And it was secret. No one even knew. Bungie didn't tell anybody that that weapon was coming. Someone just randomly found it doing a heroic story mission. And they did that with Whisper of the Worm in D2, so I will give them credit for that. But I just think that's so cool. To just randomly hide an exotic in the game and not tell anyone. I mean, it could have gone undiscovered for years if no one found it. It could be undiscovered to this day if they never found it. So just to know that that is in the game, and that's something that is always present, is really cool. And I'll give D2 credit where it's due. The Whisper of the Worm mission was really fun. And the Outbreak Perfected mission, 0 Hour, was also very fun. They did a great job with those two missions. So I'll give them credit. I don't mean this to be a bash on D2 because I play D2 every day. And it's one of my favorite games. But I think D1, besides the quality of life stuff, did it so much better. And I wish they would just take notes on what we want instead of just giving us, you know, Solstice in the fucking Guardian games. That absolute shit show. That was horrendous. Guardian game sucked. But no. We will not wipe. quests were fun, and like the Kabastel quest in year 3, that shit was awesome. There was exclusive mission just for it. You didn't know what you were getting, and it was such an awesome callback to the first weapon in the game. So that's what I mean. Exotics in D1 felt exotic, and that you felt more powerful with them. And getting them was not easy. They didn't really drop. When you bought them off Xur, Xur wasn't cheap. I mean, strange coins were not always easy to come by. I mean, now everyone that plays the game has probably hundreds of the freaking things, but it's only because, you know, where we are in the game, the D1 is over. So when we're playing all this stuff, you're not really spending it. But exotics, in the best exotics in D2, funny enough, happened to be the one they brought back in D1.
Well,
So,
Guardian,
yeah, what does that say?
it's been fun.
By the way, guys, we're going to be using skeleton keys on all this because they're easy drops and I have a lot of them.
I think they think I'm too
So
hands-on.
we'll be showcasing some Strike exclusive loot
Some of them just
when
don't
possible.
like
Wait, what?
But I think
You've done
D1
well,
probably,
guys.
like I said,
you.
wins
For the time
every
being, Venus continues to turn, despite our efforts
category
best.
besides quality of life. Mark of the... Yeah, I forgot that was a fucking Titan. Mark. Forgot about that shit. So that kind of covers the main stuff. I want to talk about the story, the destinations, the strikes, the raids, the crucible, and of course the exotics. And now just kind of the miscellaneous stuff. Again, quality of life, D2 wins. You can grapple ledges. Small thing, but it does matter. What else can you do? Yeah, you can access a map of the patrol location in the patrol, which marks public events and anything else happening on the planet. Again, quality of life. Important, though. Surely important. What else we got? I mean, those are kind of the big ones. The collections tab, amazing. Should have been a D1, for sure. The collections tab is huge. It lets you track everything that you could possibly do in the game and possibly find. Accessing the lore books in the game, so you don't have to go to the website and read the grimoire. Another great move. But I'd trade away all of that to just have the D1 experience back. That's why I would take D1. Even though the quality of life isn't there, I don't really care. It's the experience that matters more in the gameplay, and D1 just took that with ease. So, and other stuff that I think D1 did a better job with, the events were better. And by events, I mean like the seasonal shit. The Festival of the Lost was so much better in D1. The Dawning was so much better. Sparrow Racing League was a thing that was really enjoyable.
Sign here.
So just the D1 seasons felt better. It wasn't as ridden with microtransactions. Eververse did kind of come in the end. But even at the end of D1, Eververse never felt like it was something you had to do. It was something you could do if you wanted it, but you didn't really have to. D2, it's like, holy shit. I mean, there's a store tab. They shove that right down your throat. Another quality of life thing, there's more space in the vault in D1. Or, excuse me, in D2. I think, looking back, I must have, like an idiot, deleted some things I wanted to keep. I can't find my hung jury from year 2. So, I definitely deleted some stuff I didn't want to delete. But speaking of hung jury, here, watch this. This is something that D1 had. And these NPCs are literally in the tower in D2, but you can't talk to them for some stupid reason. But I'm about to do something crazy and groundbreaking. And I don't know why it's out of the game, because it's such a simple, small thing. I'm going to talk to my faction, Dead Orbit.
Started, Guardian.
Why I can't do this, I will never know. I mean, why you can't go to the factions, I have no idea. See, I would have grabbed that Legend D2. But the fact that there's no factions in D2 is just mind-numbingly stupid. They did faction rallies, which was just fucking dumb. Waste of time. Hated it. They had a formula down, and I don't know why they stopped. No one had a problem with factions. I thought they were pretty cool. But yeah, factions went away. And again, the NPCs are there, but I don't think we've had a faction rally since year 1. So we're going on 2 years now of these guys just sitting in the tower serving absolutely no purpose. So I'm not really sure why. It seriously makes no sense. Kind of one of those weird things where they just got rid of it. One thing I also like much better in Destiny 1 was shaders. I thought they did a much better job with shaders in D1. It's one shader, applies to your whole character. And it, like, so you preview it, one shader, whole character. You don't have to apply shaders. You don't have an excess of shaders everywhere. Shaders were much better in Destiny 1. And the SRL shaders were awesome. I just gotta give credit that Shimmer and Crocus are 2 of the best shaders in the entire game. So just saying. But another thing that D1 did better. This one was just nuts. When I got Thorn, there's a video on the channel of me getting Thorn. This was the shader I had on, and this shader's obnoxious, but it's pretty cool. So that's about it. Little mini venting video. It's 32 minutes, but also just a chance to get some D2 game, or D1, excuse me. You saying D2, some D1 gameplay in. A couple strikes, a la cool in the Nexus. So, just some venting on what D2 could do better. I'm excited for Beyond Light. As always, I already pre-ordered it. Deluxe, blah, blah, blah. I'm excited for it. Hoping it brings more to the table than other expansions have.
We cannot relax.
But I'm not holding my breath with D2 anymore. They have disappointed me few too many times at this point. But we'll see what they have. And I guess we'll go into year... We're going to year 4. We're going to year 4. Hopefully better than ever before. But just really look at some of these exotics. These exotics, I mean, this little black orb thingy, that is Oryx. And I mean, how cool is that? This gun is literally Oryx. I mean, these weapons were so cool. And just, I wish they were... I wish we could go back to D1. I really do. Tristan, if you're watching, Game Gangster, this is for you, buddy. Just for you. But, I mean, the Icebreaker, Spindle, these are just the raid ones. No one really cares. Bad Juju was amazing. No Time to Explain, Hawkmoon, Zalo, Suros Regime. Some really amazing weapons. I have Plan C? I don't know I got that fucking thing. I never knew I got Plan C. That is news to me. Did I ever get Vex Mytho? Yeah, I did. That's pretty cool. Either way, I had a weapon I didn't realize I actually ever got. But that works. Anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this little video. Quick little spin-off rant video. A little different style than the usual. Until next time, guys. Dozer.